Welcome to another video on HF Antennas Small Gardens. Now I'm on a most unlikely place. I'm actually on the Norfolk coast, obviously in Norfolk, and not really much connection with small gardens, except that later on I'm going to talk about the G5RV antenna. And by coincidence, it was Louis Varney, G5RV, who gave one of his last lectures on the G5RV to the Norfolk Amateur Radio Club. So there is a vague connection. But as I'm off for a couple of days, I thought this might be a fitting introduction. I can tell you it's jolly cold. It's about 3 degrees on a very exposed beach. But there we are. Anyway, we're going to talk shortly about small gardens, HF antennas, and the best way to tackle the problem. So I hope you enjoy the what is now to follow.
Well, I can tell you that was jolly cold on that beach. Now, I do like Norfolk, but it was pretty chilly, so it's nice to be here in a somewhat warmer environment. Right, so let's continue with the discussion on HF antennas for small gardens. I think even before you think of the antenna, you need to consider how you're going to support it. Now let's take again a half-wave dipole, because it's a very simple antenna to make. You might be fortunate, you might have a house at one end of the garden, and at the other end of the garden you have a tree, and those two points make a very convenient means of supporting the antenna, which is great, except that my guess is in many cases the length of the garden won't be as long as you really need, so you've got a problem there straight away. Secondly, the horizontal antenna will always sag in the middle. And the middle is where you feed it. The middle is where you've got the highest amount of current, in other words the current maximum, which is the very point that gives the maximum amount of radiation. So the point of maximum radiation is at the lowest point of the antenna. Not a good situation to be in. Generally speaking, apart from some special requirements, you want the antenna point of maximum current to be as high as possible. So I would suggest that for a lot of those of you who've got small gardens, the best option is to consider supporting the antenna at the centre. Now if we support it at the centre, it really becomes an inverted V. The centre is at the highest point, which is exactly what we want. Now, if you support the antenna at the centre as an inverted V, you also get another advantage. You start off with the antenna like that, sagging in the middle. You turn it into an inverted V, and as you turn it into an inverted V, although the length of the antenna doesn't change, the space needed to fit it into the garden changes quite dramatically. That to that makes a big difference. Shorten the antenna without shortening it. There we are. Now, in order to support the antenna, I would suggest you give great consideration to a fiberglass telescopic pole. Fiberglass has the advantage it's non-conductive. Now, later on I'm going to talk about antennas such as the G5RV, which requires ladder line or open wire feeder, and other antennas. If you're using open wire feeder or ladder line, you don't want the mast to be conductive, because inevitably the ladder line is going to be coming down the mast, and if it's metallic and conductive, it's going to completely destroy the balance and so forth of the ladder line. So if you're going to have support in the centre, I would say go for fiberglass. We sell an excellent range of fiberglass masts called Spider Poles. They come from Germany. They're extremely well made. They're not these cheap fishing poles that you hear and may have seen around. They're just the business. And even the shortest one will go up to just short of 40 feet, and it's quite light. The advantage of a telescopic fiberglass pole is that it's so much easier to install. Collapse, it's only around about 5 foot tall. It's very easy to carry, to transport in the car, put in the garden and telescope a bit up. If you were going for something like a 25-foot fixed pole or mast, you may find it's even wider than your garden. And that's not a situation that you really want to be in, because it makes it very difficult to erect. So a fiberglass pole, a fiberglass telescopic mast is a great investment. And I think if you're starting out from scratch, and if you've got a small garden, give that some thought and go for some sort of inverted V. It may not be a dipole, but it's an inverted V. An inverted V means to say that the length that's needed to get to certain antenna length in the garden is reduced. There's also another advantage, and you need to investigate this yourself with your local authorities. But generally speaking, a telescopic mast is not regarded as a fixed structure. Now, I know that a lot of authorities have regulations regarding masts and so forth, and if you've got a small garden, you may well be in a situation where there are regulations. And of course, you've got to live with your neighbours as well. If you use a telescopic mast, it's highly likely that you won't need planning permission. Now, I say highly likely because I say that without any knowledge of where you live and what the regulations are. You might want to check those out. But generally speaking, something that telescopes is not regarded as a permanent structure. Now, inverted V antenna forms a triangle. And if I remember from my school days, it was something like the square on the hypotenuse equals the sum of the square on the opposite two sides. Well, that may well be the case, but I think there's a much easier way of doing it for a quick calculation. All you need is a tape measure like that, and a pen, and a bit of paper which you can scribble on and draw an inverted V. Now, what you need, what I've done, I mean, I'll work in inches because that's what I was brought up in. So you can use whatever you like. But I've used 3 inches as one leg of the inverted V dipole, and 3 inches as the other inverted V of the dipole. And I said that represents 30 feet. And I've also drawn a mast in the centre. I got no prizes at school for drawing either. I've also drawn a mast in the centre which is 20 foot high, which is 2 inches high. So I've got 3 inches, 3 inches, 2 inches, or 30 foot, 30 foot, 20 foot. And all I need to do is to find the distance there, which I can find very easily by simply putting the tape measure on it. Then I put the tape measure on it and I measure it out. Believe it or not, it's 4 inches. That means to say that in a 40 foot length there, I can get a 60 foot antenna. Now, I think that's quite remarkable because I've effectively got a 60 foot antenna in a 40 foot garden, and I've used no loading inductors at all. I think that's a serious way of tackling the small garden problem. Now, that's not a bad thing, is it? If we were to perhaps consider a half-size 5RV, 2 25-foot legs, and that would very easily fit into a 40-foot garden. That would give us 20 metres. Would it give us 15 and 10? Well, that's where we start to talk about the G5RV, and that's what I'm going to come on to next. But basically, an inverted V dipole is a great way of fitting an antenna into the garden, and I would suggest that an awful lot of you that have got small gardens can actually get a half-wave 40 metre antenna into the garden. And there are little tricks that we can use to make that a bit easier for you. Yes, so next time I'll talk about the G5RV. Quite an interesting antenna actually. And there's a lot of people who've got a lot of opinions about it, and I can only tell you what I think about it and what my experience is and so forth. But before we go, there was one other thing I wanted to talk about, and that is coax cable. I was reading a couple of remarks recently where somebody said that the RG58 is pretty rubbish cable. Well, sorry, but it's not rubbish. If you're operating in a small garden, you generally speaking want to keep the weight down of everything, and coax cable is something that will add a certain amount of weight to the antenna. And I have used RG58 for many years and had no problems with it at all. RG58 cable is a cable that has a specification, and it says what it does on the tin. If you're worried about using RG58 and worried about losses, then I would suggest for HF purposes you don't worry about it. Let me give you an example. RG58 is widely used in mobile installations for 144 MHz and 430 MHz, and generally speaking the cable length is around about 5 meters long. Hundreds if not thousands of hams use RG58 in their mobile installation and don't think anything about it. So if RG58 is fine on 144 MHz and 430 MHz, then it's certainly not a problem on 14 MHz or 21 MHz. The loss is very minimal indeed, and if coax cable weight is something which you need to consider, then provided you're not running more than 100 watts, I would quite happily use RG58. So please don't worry about that one. So next time, hopefully we can talk about the G5RV. In the meantime, I hope I've given you some more pointers on what you can do and what you can't do in a small garden. And until we meet again shortly, enjoy your ham radio.